So you've finished editing. You need to get it out so you can share it with people. You want to be able to turn in your final project for a grade. You want to be able to post it on YouTube for people to share. Whatever it is, having it as a Resolve editing project doesn't do anyone any good except for you. So we need to be able to get it out of here. This is what the delivery page is all about. So remember those 7 buttons at the very bottom of the screen. We're going to go to the rightmost one, Deliver. And this is what it looks like. Now, there are some things that we can play with here, but most important, most of what you're going to be playing with is in the top left-hand corner. So up here, the Render Settings button is turned on. And if it's not, right, if you have the tape button highlighted, just go ahead and go back to Render Settings. This Clips button, if you turn it on and off, simply puts that little thumbnail timeline on the screen. It doesn't make any difference for what we're doing. So we're going to make sure that Render Settings is turned on. And then across the top here, we have a handful of options, right? There's an option for a custom output. There's an option to output for YouTube, an option to output for Vimeo, an option to output for ProRes. If you were handing this off to another editor, maybe somebody else was going to do the color grading or whatever was going on, but this was going to another professional location, this is probably the setting that you would use. And then this last one for H.264. H.264 is a generic term. Well, it's actually a very specific term, but it refers to a type of video compression. Now, it's kind of funny because if you use the Vimeo setting or the YouTube setting, you're still going to be working with H.264. But these have got presets that are designed to work well with those platforms. If you're going out as a generic file, it might end up on YouTube, it might end up on Vimeo, it might end up on TikTok, it might end up emailed to people that they're watching it directly on their iPhone, or they might be watching on an Android device, or they might be watching on a tablet. You don't know where it's going to end up, but you want it to be accessible to everybody. This is a good choice, H.264. So that is what I'm going to work with. These all work in very similar fashion. They simply restrict your choices. So if you're using a different option, maybe you're using the YouTube option and it doesn't look quite like what I'm doing, it's simply because they have restricted options to make it work more effectively, specifically with YouTube. All right, so here for my H.264. First thing of all, I'm going to give it a name, and I'm just going to call this Scott's Coffee. Location gives me a chance to control where it's saved to, so I'm going to hit my Browse button, and I want to send this. In my case, everything is on my external drive called Samsung Red. And I'm actually going to make a new folder here, and I'm going to call this Exports for Class. And that's where I'm going to save it. Okay. Now we want to turn this into a single movie, so make sure this single clip is turned on. By default, it will be. But if you accidentally click this other one, it will take your video apart and it will add extra information to it. This is if you're going to, again, if you were going to send this off to another production house and they were going to do subsequent work on color grading or audio manipulation or whatever, this might be useful, but we're not doing that. So just leave it for a single clip. Then we have some tabs here that we can play with. So the video, we definitely want to export our video. Format is how do you want it saved. By default, it's gone to a QuickTime file. I actually want to save this as an MPEG-4, so I'm going to drop that down and change it to MP4. MP4, very common, very useful file. Almost everything that's been made in the last decade can play in MP4. You see that the codec is chosen for me. It's H.264 because I'm on the H.264 tab, and I can't actually change it. I can change it to H.265, but we're not going to do that. If you were in a different tab, if you were in the custom tab, for example, this would have a lot more choices. Now here's a last chance to make sure I have everything right. I know that this was standard definition 720 by 480, so that is correct, but I could actually change the resolution right now. I could upscale it to HD. I could even upscale it to 4K if I wanted to. You can see there are a lot of options here. And it works the other way around. If you had a 4K video or an HD video and you wanted to shrink it down to make the file smaller, to make it work better online as a streaming file, you could reduce the resolution at this point. And my frame rate, it's 29.97, that's what it was before. It's not going to let me change it, but on different tabs, if I was on the custom tab or if I was on any other tab, I would actually be able to change the frame rate at this point if I wanted to. I'm going to leave the quality on automatic. No reason to play around with that. And all of this stuff, I'm just going to leave alone. But again, remember, that's just one set of settings. We also have audio settings. I'll just scroll through this so you can see it. Generally speaking, I don't need to touch this. But I could if I wanted to make changes to the data rate, to how it was encoded. I can even change if it was output as a stereo track, or I could break it apart so that every audio track was a separate audio file. That's actually quite a nightmare. Don't do that. And then I have some other options here that I honestly haven't explored. But all I really needed to do in all of this, the only thing that I've changed was here. I changed my format from QuickTime to MP4. And if I didn't do that, it would be exported as a QuickTime, a .mov file, and probably the world wouldn't end. Okay, so now that I've got it set, I gave it a name, I gave it a location, I changed the format. Didn't have to do that, but I did. I'm going to click this button that says Add to Render Queue, and it is going to jump across to the right side of the screen. This is my render queue. So I could actually, at this point, if I wanted to, do this more than once. So I also want to output a video that I know is going to go to YouTube, right? So I could click on the YouTube option and go through and change these settings if I needed to. Then I could go over and add that to my render queue. Then I could do a separate one for Vimeo, right? I could output multiple versions of this. And for YouTube, for example, you often see videos on YouTube that have more than one playback resolution, right? You can click on the drop down and you can choose 1080p, 720p, 480p. I could actually do 3 different versions of this and load them all over here into this render queue. I'm not going to do that today, but I could. Once I'm ready to go, I just move over here to the render queue and hit this Start Render button. And it will do its thing. You'll see that it's moving pretty quickly. This is a very simple file. It's standard definition. I'm not using much in the way of special effects or transitions or titles, so nothing to choke the computer. This can take a long time. If you have an old, weak computer, or if you're doing some intensive stuff, this can take hours, even days to finish. All right, this one took 24 seconds. Okay. So now if I move over, I'm going to open a Finder window, and I'm going to go take a look over here on my Samsung Red drive. Change the list there. And there's my Exports for Class folder, and there it is, scottscoffee.mp4. I am ready to play this. I'm ready to upload it to YouTube. I'm ready to email it to my Aunt Gertie. Whatever. It's there. I am ready to turn it in and get my grade. That's it. That's all there is to getting it out of your Resolve and turn it loose on the world as an actual video file. Go to the Deliver tab, click a couple of buttons, and booyah. Okay, this actually wraps up the basic portion of editing. Now, there is a ton of stuff that we've just scratched the surface of, and there's a ton of stuff we haven't talked about at all. And I will continue to churn videos out as the semester goes on to show you how to do some pretty cool things. If you have any questions about stuff that you would like to do, let me know, and I will focus on it. I will make a video just for you.